Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll get started in a few seconds. Meanwhile, let's wait for a bit for everybody to join. Okay, let's get started. So good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to a Companial webinar called GIT and Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management. How to use code repositories in the most efficient way. My name is Paulius Brezgys. I'm coming from a company called Companial, and I'm a leading Dynamics 365 Finance Supply Chain Management architect. And yeah, working with AX and Finance Supply Chain Management for a fair bit of time. And today I'll be sharing our experiences, our findings, and our myth-busting experiences, let's say, about Git and how to use Git with Dynamics 365. So let's not wait and let's get started. So first of all, we're going to talk quickly about the Companial, about the company that I'm coming from. And then we're going to jump into the main topic for today. So first, we're going to talk about the Git for Dynamics 365. I'm going to give you a quick intro about it, what's important to know before we start talking about Git. Then we're going to compare shortly Git versus VSTS, or the traditional source control system for Dynamics 365 Finance Supply Chain Management. And I'm going to highlight the pros and cons of each of those. Then we're going to talk about how to get started with Git for Dynamics 365. What are the important steps in the configurations not to miss to get to start using Git successfully. And after we talk about what's important to get started, we're going to talk about branching strategies, best branching strategies we found to use with Git. And after that, the last topic will be when we have established the setup and the branching strategies. I'm also going to talk about application lifecycle management with Git for Dynamics 365. What are the best release strategies and what are the tools and what are, let's say, the tips and the shortcuts and pro hacks that we found while we were using Git for the projects that we work with our partners. And after that will be a Q&A time. So feel free to drop your Q&A questions already, and I'll try to answer best of my knowledge at the end of the webinar today. So stay tuned till the end. So let's get started. A few words about Companial, the company that I'm coming from. So first of all, what's Companial? So we see ourselves at Companial as ambassadors for Dynamics partner community, and we have various experience in different areas. So we have a few business lines. We have Dynamics 365 Finance Supply Chain Management. We have Dynamics 365 Business Central. We are also a provider for Microsoft licenses. We are Microsoft ISV Development Center, Gold Certified Partner, and Microsoft Learning Partner. But what's important is that we are Dynamics 365 Finance Supply Chain Management help Dynamics 365 Finance Supply Chain Management partners. And our experience is quite well reflected in numbers. So we have done more than 40,000 hours already on Dynamics AX and 365 implementation projects. We have delivered more than 200 best path assessments. So yeah, these are the most, let's say, key numbers about Dynamics 365. And yeah, what kind of services we provide specifically for Dynamics 365 Finance Supply Chain Management? So we have a wide range of services that we provide to our partners. So first of all, we can help you with solution migration from the on-premises versions of Dynamics to Dynamics 365. We can help you with managing those implementations when you have them migrated or when you do new implementation with our managed services package. We can also help you with development services, both for implementation projects, also for ISV solutions. We can help you with consulting services if you need any help or assistance, or you need our expertise, technical expertise in Dynamics 365. And also, if you have a team that you want to get trained, either functional or technical trainings, we can also help you with that. So this is the very quickly overview of what kind of services we can provide for our Dynamics 365 Finance Supply Chain Management partners. And yeah, that's very few words about Companial. And now let's jump to the main topic. And first of all, I'm gonna discuss the introduction for Dynamics 365 Finance Supply Chain Management. And yeah, before jumping into the main topic, we have a quick poll. So yeah, let me know. Have you already tried using Git for Dynamics 365? Let's see what kind of audience we have here today. So yeah, a few seconds just to submit your answers, please. Okay, I see answers are coming in. Let's wait for a few more seconds. Okay, still answers are coming in. Let's not stop the count yet. Okay. I see most of the answers are in. So, okay, so few of you have tried, but not using it. So you're my target audience. I'll try to convince you otherwise. A big part of almost half of the people today have tried and using successfully, which I'm happy to hear about. But yeah, I'll share some tips, hopefully that can help you using it. And also, I have more than half of participants that have never tried using Git for Dynamics 365 projects. So yeah, that's probably going to be also my target audience for today. So thank you for answers, and let's get started. So first of all, let's quickly introduce the Git for Dynamics 365 and what I'm actually going to talk about today. So before talking about Git, let's talk about source control and why source control is actually needed in the Dynamics 365 project. So, as Dynamics 365 is a cloud product and all of the code is deployed through the cloud, you can work without source control, but at the same time, it's better to use it because you usually have more developers working than one on a single Dynamics 365 project. And you need a tool that enables code sharing between multiple developers. And at the same time, you probably want the code to be stored somewhere securely, not on a development environment, because it can have a deadly Windows update. So you usually want to store it somewhere safe. And but also you want to have a Dynamics 365 project because we have such a luxury. You can have a cloud-hosted build and release agents that free up your time. You don't have to build, you don't have to upload manually. You can have these kind of automation tools available, and that's where source control comes into help for you. Now, there are a few common misconceptions about Git for Dynamics 365, specifically that I'm going to be addressing today. So first of all, this is the most common one. Git is not recommended by Microsoft. So this is what I hear very often. And yeah, this is fair point. But while not being officially recommended and supported by Microsoft, Microsoft gives you all the tools needed to successfully work with Git, including build and release templates for Git. So Microsoft is providing the templates and setup instructions and so on. So while they say that, no, it's not officially supported, all the tooling is there. Second, let's say myth or misconception is that Git is cumbersome with Dynamics 365 finance supply chain management. And I have seen examples in my experience where it really becomes cumbersome. So yeah, stay tuned for configuration tips, how to configure it and not for it to not be cumbersome and to be really to use it to the full potential that it can be used. And number three, Git is not properly integrated with Visual Studio for Dynamics 365. Again, this is a valid point. It was like that. I have seen that happen, especially with Visual Studio 2015 or 17. But since Visual Studio 2019, and I have been personally part of that transition, since Visual Studio 2019, Git works perfectly in Visual Studio, at least from how much we need of the Git. So yeah, it works perfectly. There's no issues with that anymore. So this myth, let's say, could also be busted. Yeah, so these are a few misconceptions, and I'll elaborate on those a bit, and I'll try to convince you otherwise. And yeah, before we get started, let's quickly overview the principles of Git and the basic terms that I'm going to be using. So, okay, so Git, first of all, fetch. Fetch does actually brings the remote. So Git has local repositories and remote repositories, right? There's some code on your machine and some code in the cloud. Fetch brings cloud to your local environment. And actually, every time you use Git, whole repository is used. It's not like you are only, stored on your machine. It's not like you only have a piece of code on your machine. Checking out what it does, it actually checks out the branch that you are working on and gets the branch ready for you to work on. Pull syncs and brings changes locally. So whoever did some changes in a remote, if you are working on the same branch, pull will bring all of your changes to you. Commit is where you're done with the changes and you commit that you have done, right? So basically that's the way you let's say let everybody know that, hey, this is the changes that I wanted to commit. Push sends all of the local commits to remote. So from the local machine, you send it to the remote, the shared code base. Merges branches one into another. And cherry pick is another important term that I'm going to be using, which allows to only pick selected changes into the current branch from another. Merges everything from one branch to another. Cherry pick allows you to only pick minor pieces from one branch to another. So these are a few key terms and principles and facts about Git that I wanted you to know before elaborating a bit more. Next, I'm going to quickly compare Git versus Visual Studio Team Services or VSTS or TFS-styled source control, and I'm going to give you some pros and cons. So from our experience, what are the Git pros over Visual Studio or VSTS source control? So first of all, you usually get easier merging. This is from our experience. How? I'm going to explain you a bit later, but basically the key to easier merging is cherry picking, but also at the same time, part of the easier merging is because of the principles how these source controls work. Second, you usually get clearer branching strategy with Git. You get possibility to maintain many code bases remotely and locally. So you can locally you have many code bases, at the same time remotely you can have many code bases very easily, and it's very easy to switch between them. And lastly, one of the latest pros is that Git is getting all the love and all the investment from Microsoft. So VSTS is considered as a feature complete, so Microsoft is not improving it anymore. So it's still, perfectly fine, perfectly working, but Git is all getting all the love and all of the new cool stuff. Yeah, and under the hood, how is Git different versus VSTS? So there's big, let's say, big differences under the hood how this source control works. But in a nutshell, Git only saves differential changes. VSTS saves the entire, let's say, entire code base, entire branch. Every time you do a change, every time you push a change, it pushes the entire code base. Git only pushes deltas, changes. And this gives you upper hand in merging. And this gives you an upper hand in basically all of the branches are lightweight. So all of the code that is in a repository can actually easily just clone locally, while with VSTS you cannot download everything that is already coded because that's just too much data. Yeah, so these are quick pros and cons, but yeah, it actually boils down usually with a Git. It actually usually boils down. So basically, it's just simpler to use, cleaner to use, easier merging. Yeah, so these are the main pros for Git to use with Dynamics 365. Now, cool. We know that it's better, right? How to actually get started using it. And that's what my next chapter is about. So what I'm going to talk about here today in this topic is, before talking about how to set it up, let's have a quick look at the prerequisites. So what do you need to get started with Git? Usually you need DevOps project, right? Azure DevOps project where everything related to your implementation lives, tasks and code and test scenarios. Then you need Git repository, so you need to create Git repository in DevOps project. Of course, you need access to that repository for all developers that will be working on the project. And initially you need at least one branch. It can be empty, where you will be starting to work on main branch or master branch, whatever you name it. When you have that ready, next step is to configure Visual Studio, right? Developer toolkit. Now, configuring Visual Studio and actually configuring your local machine is quite easy. You need to create some repository folder like C DevOps or C source control, whatever you name it. You should not map Git to the package's local directory. I'll explain you why. So first you need to create the folder where the repository will live. And then when you have the folder ready, you just open Visual Studio, select you want to connect to Git repository, and map it to the local folder. That's it. That's going to clone code locally. Now, pro tips, and that's where my hacks come in. So you should not connect the Git to the package's local directory. Why? It's going to become cumbersome. Remember second myth that I mentioned? It's going to be cumbersome. That's why. So yeah, so you should not connect instead of, right, okay, but you don't connect to package's local directory, how are you going to get code, right, to your F&O, right, to your Visual Studio, how are you going to get the F&O code there? So there's a hack, a really good one, that allows you to get the code from the local repository folder to package's local directory. So you should use symbolic links, shortcuts, folder shortcuts from your, let's say, C DevOps to package's local directory, and that will bring these folders that are in a local repo folder to package's local directory, and Visual Studio will see them, these files, the F&O servers will see these files, so you will have actually code. And on that pro tip, I have another mega pro tip just to make life easier. You can build 5-minute script actually using PowerShell to create and remove those symbolic links. So what you need to do, basically, everything that you have in that repo folder, C DevOps, let's say, you just need to create symbolic links for everything that you have there. And when you have to change branches, for example, for one reason or another, you can remove those links, change branches, create links again. That will make life with Git very easy. So that's how you configure the local machine. Now, another important thing and another important hack is git ignore configuration. Now, the default git ignore doesn't work with Dynamics 365 Finance Supply Chain Management because you want to exclude, you want to include only the X++ model directories code only. You don't want to include, the everything that's junk after building. You want to include, of course, the scripter files. You want to include the reference DLLs, and you want to include directories for add-on packages like vertical or ISV solutions that you have. What you don't want to include is XREF files and model bin directories with the model, DLL files, and so on. So this is something that you don't want to include because every time you build, these files are generated. So how do you get that done? Yeah, so standard git ignore logic does not work as expected. That's what we have learned the hard way. And we have a nice blog post where actually we explain how to make git ignore work for Dynamics 365. So we'll in the handout after the webinar, you will receive some material, and in that material will also be a link to the blog post. But yeah, basically, it all boils down to a few things, few principles. So first of all, in the root directory for the source control, you want to ignore everything except for desired model. And then that model directory, you add a second git ignore file, and then you include, again, you exclude everything except for the X++ directory. So that's where the code is, because at the same directory, you also have bin and xref and whatever, so you don't want that included. You only want to include the actual X++ directory. So you need 2 git files, and you need git ignore files, and you need git ignore file for every model that you're working on. This is not, let's say, intuitive, but that's how it works. And yeah, we have it explained in the blog post. So you can feel free, to use it, and that will save you some life and some time. Okay, so as you have Git configured on your local machine, you can start working, right? You can start building code. And the code will be detected automatically. You don't need to add something to source control like you do in Visual Studio, VSTS source control, and then you miss some file and then you get build errors in the other machine and so on. No, in Git, everything gets detected automatically. So, okay, you start coding. Cool, everybody's working on master branch, let's say for the beginning, right? But later on, as the project grows bigger and bigger, again, it's not convenient for everybody to work on a single branch anymore. So what you should do then? Well, thankfully, there are some good branching strategies that are available and are easy to implement with Git. And that's what I'm going to talk about in my next section. So, okay, let's look at some theory first. Why do you need branching strategy, and what are the main requirements for that strategy? So usually you need master branch to hold all the code from everybody. Basically, a trash bin where, well, not a trash bin, a glorified trash bin where everybody throws their code and all the code is there. So that's the master branch usually. Also, you need isolated branches for acceptance or like user acceptance and the production environments. So these are the clean branches where the stuff that's ready to release goes in, right? And you need those branches to be isolated. No developer should not be working on them, but yeah, you need a separate branches just to keep that code, under control and maintainable at the same time. You have references what is in which environment. And also, the other requirement is that developers should be able to work on the code base part simultaneously with as little discomfort as possible. So that's the main requirement for the branching strategy. So how do you achieve that? So over the years, we have found that Git flow strategy works the best for Dynamics 365 projects. And yeah, the strategy basically consists of few branches. So master branch is the one that all of the code base is. Feature branches for every feature that you're working on, and they are, let's say, the copies of master branch. And of course, there are release branches. So what are the benefits of the strategy? So yeah, it uses master branch as a central repository. That's requirement number one, right, from the previous slide. Feature branches enable developers to work separately from the master branch. So every developer can work on his master branch and feature branch, and then merge into master. But they will not have any discomfort while they work on feature branch. So that's another requirement met. Features are merged into master once complete. That again maintains the common code base. And this strategy also has dedicated branches for acceptance and production environments. Now, how to implement this strategy and how to use those branches. Okay, so first of all, master branch. Master branch contains all the code base ready to be tested features, right? So generally, developers should not merge anything that's not complete into master, but master is ready to be tested compilable code, but usually not one that is completely tested yet. So master branch is usually deployed to some integration testing environment where just some unit tests are done. Usually master branch has infinite lifecycle. It lives forever until the project lasts because it has all of the code and it's constantly growing. And merges into the main branch should be done using pull requests. So whenever developer completes the feature branch, he has to merge, but he should not just merge, he should use pull requests. And I'll come back to that topic when we're going to talk about the ALM for Dynamics 365. Now, okay, feature branches. We discussed master branch. Now let's look at the feature branches. So yeah, feature branches are like dedicated for every feature that developer is working on. They always start as a copy of master branch, right? So it's basically a child of the master. You just copy everything in master, and then you add your modifications on top. Once complete, these feature branches should be merged into main. And optionally, also, when you complete the feature branch and you merge it into master, you can actually delete it. It serves no purpose anymore because all of the code that you needed is already in the master branch. And yeah, as I mentioned previously, you should use pull requests to merge into the main or master branch to enable a few things. First of all, you can enforce code review process. So pull requests should be completed by code reviewer. So only code reviewer actually completes that merging process. At the same time, you get code traceability. Pull requests should be linked to the work items, and then you have commits and the builds and everything linked to that work item. So yeah, it really benefits to use pull request because it serves purpose for that precious link between code and work items that you really want to have. Okay, so that was feature branch. So we discussed about master and feature branches, and now let's discuss about release branch. So usually we have dedicated branches for every environment. So usually it's UAT for the user acceptance and production for, well, production environment. And there can be two strategies for this one. You can sometimes have single branch per environment with infinite lifespan. So every time you're making a release, you just push changes into the respective branch and you make a new build, and then the code gets released. Second strategy is to have a release dedicated short-lived branches, like UAT release 2022 1124, which basically says the date, and production release also the same way. And in that case, you basically make a copy of the latest branch and you add features to that copy of the latest branch. This allows you to have different copies, and basically you have a time machine so you can see when you released which feature. But at the same time, it's kind of cumbersome because you have a ton of UAT and ton of production release branches. And yeah, it's a bit of a witch hunt if you want to figure out what was released when. Both strategies work, and they have their own purposes. Now, so UAT branch, what it's for, usually dedicated for acceptance testing environment, code releases, and release process is you basically should cherry pick changes from master. You should not merge feature branches or cherry pick from feature branches. Why? Because there might be merge conflicts that you already solved when you merged into master from the feature branch, and you don't want to resolve those conflicts anymore, right? So that's why you should cherry pick. Whenever you release something to UAT branch, just cherry pick from master. Same applies to production branch. It's dedicated for production environment, and the release process is similar, but instead of cherry picking from master, you should cherry pick from UAT branch, right? Because you want to release features that have been already user acceptance tested, and you probably have resolved some merge conflicts when you made UAT release. You wanna release exactly same code that you released to UAT, so you just cherry pick from UAT and not from master, not from feature branch. Yeah, quite simple and quite easy. So that was about the branching strategy in general. Yeah, so we use master branch, feature branch, and the release branches. And then to make a release from one to another, we cherry pick. And to commit into the master branch, we always use pull requests just to have that precious link and to enforce code review process. Quite simple, right? So we discussed the branching strategy that you should use with Dynamics 365 and with Git. And yeah, so we have Visual Studio set up. We did some coding. We did that coding on the feature branches, merged into main branch. Then we want to merge into UAT branch and so on. So all good, right? We have source control. Now, we can already release code to other environments. We can, download the code, prepare the package locally, and then apply it to Dynamics 365 environment. But what if we can take this next step and to the next level? Basically, what if we can automate all of that? Maybe we can automate the builds. Maybe we can automate releases. Maybe we can enforce nice code reviews. So that's what my next chapter is about application lifecycle for Dynamics 365 and some hacks and some new features and cool features enabled by Git. So what could be the application lifecycle requirements for Dynamics 365? So first, you want to have code documentation and traceability. So you really want to know what code belongs to which work item, because sometimes you have to do some troubleshooting or some witch hunt, and you want to see which code came from what requirement. You also usually want to enforce code review process, right? The leading developer should review the code from his peers. You usually want to have automated builds, first of all, to validate code integrity outside developer's environment, right? You want to avoid the classic, hey, it works on my machine or it compiles on my machine. So you want to make sure that it also compiles outside developer's machine. You also want to have easy code release process between different environments. So you want to have that automated as much as possible. And you want to automate the release process also to test environments and to pre-production environments even. So how to achieve that with the Dynamics 365 and with Git? So first of all, how to achieve code documentation. So as I briefly already mentioned, use feature branches for every feature. And the most important thing, no one should work ever on the master branch. Never, ever, ever. Why? Because that code will not be connected and will not be documented. So all these things that are developed should be developed on feature branches and only then added to the master branch. So another hack is that each code commit to the feature branch should have a meaningful name, ideally with the work item number. Why? Because, again, code traceability. And each committed code to the feature branch should have a work item number. Yeah, as I mentioned, thank me later when you will be making releases and you have to pick specific work items. That will save you a lot of time figuring out what code you need to release. Now, as I mentioned previously, you should use pull requests to merge feature branches into master. Why? Because pull requests will create a link between commits into the master branch and work items. So basically, work item on the right side, right? It will have on the code, it will have all the commits that you have done to the master branch. And this is priceless when you have to figure out where the code came from, what was the requirement, right? And also, pull requests can be used for enforce the code preview process. So no changes should go into master directly, no changes should go into the master without pull request. You should not merge the feature branch into main without pull request. And pull request, basically pull requests should be only completed by the lead developers in the project, and they should review the code being pushed into. This is an easy way to enforce code process, code review process. Now, we talked about code documentation again. So second topic, how to achieve automated build options for Dynamics 365. There are two options to build code with Dynamics 365. First of all, there's Azure hosted build, and there's also build virtual machines. Some pros and cons of each of those. Azure hosted build has fast build. It runs in Azure. You don't need a dedicated environment. Validates code integrity, validates add-on packages for compilers and for versions. What it produces all-in-one packages for Dynamics 365, so we can take these packages and deploy it to acceptance testing, let's say. But some cons is that it doesn't validate the data structure integrity. It doesn't synchronize the database. Why? Because it doesn't have the data. It's on Azure, just on Azure pipeline. It doesn't have the actual F&O. It just has binaries. They're perfectly fine, but it doesn't have the database. Check. Another advantage is that it allows multiple versions to be used. So Azure hosted build, on every pipeline you can specify build. So for example, you usually have your acceptance testing environment on a higher version than production because you are testing the new features, right, that Microsoft introduced, but you don't have that version yet in production. So you can have different versions on the same hosted build on different pipelines for different environments. Build virtual machine, however, requires dedicated hosted virtual machine it only allows you to use single version for all branches that you have. When it does, it validates code, add-ons, and it also validates database schema because it's a virtual machine which has database. So it can synchronize database, and same as hosted build, it produces all in packages. So these are two options that you can use. Again, from our experience, Azure hosted build is a easier to maintain solution compared to build virtual machine. And the only advantage of build virtual machine is that it allows you to check for the database synchronization errors. How much useful is that? From my experience, we are working with Git source control and with hosted builds for a few years already. I think we have had like 5 builds that had data structure issues. So really, the errors with data structure are really not that common. So my advice would be to use Azure hosted builds because it's just easier to set up, easier to maintain, and it runs faster. Yeah, so how to set up those automated build pipelines? Just really, just an indication. So automated build pipelines, there are great examples by Yoris, by Microsoft, provided on GitHub, Microsoft Learn. So there is a basic build pipeline, which is usually what all you need. And yeah, there are nice instructions from Microsoft. So just one thing before you set up, you have to keep in mind that each release branch should have a dedicated build pipeline. So you want to have one build pipeline for, for test environment, one for UAT, and one for production or for live environment, as I have in my screenshot. Some pro tips that Microsoft doesn't include in their docs. First of all, when you want to usually set up automatic triggers on every branch, on every release branch. Why? Because you want to validate every time you commit something, you want to validate if it's valid or not. So that's why you usually want to have a trigger. And how to get those triggers right, that's another hack. So you should use different naming for each branch YAML files. Otherwise, you might have a bit of a mess with those build pipelines because one pipeline might pick another's code and so on. So you want to have a different naming for the YAML files so that only the intended branch triggers your pipeline. For example, UAT branch triggers UAT pipeline. Yeah, that's a small hack that we found, but yeah, should be really useful when you set it up. Okay, so you have the code, you have it documented, you have a build pipeline, so you have packages built in Studio. That's great. How to release it? So of course you could download the package and upload it to us manually and write an environment. But again, that's cumbersome, right? So why not automate that? Luckily for us, there's also a way to automate the release pipeline. Now, how to do that? So usually you create a trigger for it, which is based on the build pipeline output. So whatever you build, you want to get released. And yeah, release pipeline tasks are pretty simple. You need 3 tasks. First task is the authentication. Then you need upload package to LCS, right, as you do manually. And then you need to apply these packages to design environment. How to configure that? Again, it's quite well documented by Microsoft in Microsoft Learn. So I won't really go step by step, but yeah, basically you need 3 steps: authenticate, upload LCS, and then apply package. Now, some hacks about that: these automated releases, they allow scheduling. So you usually don't want to release, as soon as something is actually built because people are working. Let's say in our acceptance environment, people are working there. So what you can do here is you can have schedule releases, and you can schedule releases to happen overnight or just outside working hours. And then, everybody's happy because, nobody's working on environment and the update just happens overnight. So really cool. Yeah, so this is basically it. So you have the code documented nicely. with the pull request, link to work items. You make a releases to branches, you cherry pick from one to another. Then your hosted builds kick off and build those branches into packages. And then your release pipelines pick those packages and bring them to the desired environment, whether that's testing environment, user acceptance testing environment, or even to a pre-production. One note, of course, they cannot bring your package to production environment because that's a manual work, and probably for the better, right? Because you really want to make sure when you make production releases. But yeah, other than that, all other environments can be pretty nicely automated. And you can get creative. You can add some extra steps to those release pipelines, like releasing release notes or maybe refreshing data entity list and so on. So you can get really creative with those tasks. So with that, yeah, I hope you're now more knowledgeable with the Git. And yeah, before we close, as I promised, let's have a quick Q&A session where I'll be basically taking questions. And yeah, so feel free to drop any questions you have, and I'll try to answer. And yeah, on the right side of the screen, you should be able to see a Q&A window where you can drop your question. Okay, so we don't see any questions here. So yeah, so I hope I managed to bust those myths that you had about Git. And yeah, I hope you will be able to use it successfully in your projects. Yeah, if you need any help and you need any expertise with Dynamics 365 project, is here. Companial is here for you with our experienced team to help on Dynamics 365 project. So yeah, also before you leave, don't forget to download the useful materials. So we'll have a webinar PDF available to download, and we'll have a handouts. And yeah, if you need any help, get in touch. And thank you for taking part. Stay safe, and see you in Dynamics 365 world.